All right, Mom. So what a week, huh? It's been quite a week for you, and you're always been kind of crazy with the Jets. But I figured it was good for you to come on here, and I would be your counselor and your spiritual guide as we walk through Mark Gastineau's video and what happened this whole week. And I just wanted to get what were your thoughts seeing it for the first time of him talking to Brett Favre? What were your thoughts?
Wow. Let's see, where do I begin really with this? First of all, I'm very excited about the 30 for 30 that's going to be on starting, this Friday night on ESPN, where they're doing the entire sack exchange.
Hmm.
Because I think it's something that's so important and has been for so long and has such a strong identity with so many New York Jets fans. So that's number one. And they were quite a bunch. And I think that's what makes it so special.
Now you were there working for the team when were all the players drafted while you were there?
Yeah, in 76 and 77, we had Abdul Salam, who was Larry Falk. And then we had Joe Klecko from Temple. Then in 1979, that is when we coached the Senior Bowl. As I said, Marty Lyons from Alabama was already there, and we had to get a person to come in for Mike Stensrud. And that's the whole thing where I kind of tried to find somebody to replace them. And Walt Michaels was the head coach. And so my boss was on the road. He said to find somebody. And I searched and talked to, it was very hard back in those days because you didn't have computers and YouTube
Hmm.
and everything. And I then decided, after looking at whatever I had, to call the guys. And
Hmm.
just to shorten it, only one guy was just full of enthusiasm, ready to go. I didn't know he was going to be that great, but I loved his passion and ready
Hmm.
to play. And it turned out he was from East Central Oklahoma, and 4.55 and 6'5", 270, Mark Gastineau.
So what were the personalities like of the four of them? You've obviously gotten to know them all over the years. How would you describe each of them? What's it
Wow,
like? What are they all like? For those
well,
who
first,
don't
as
haven't
I
met them,
said,
maybe.
Larry Falk, who was from Kent State, and when he came to us was Abdul Salam, which meant soldier of peace. And he just passed away in the past month or so. A wonderful, wonderful man with a fantastic family, great wife, Deborah. And he was the strength, the backbone, the peacemaker right from the start. Abdul had something very special about him, that he may not have been the sack man of the other two on the end, but in the defensive tackle,
Hmm.
he was the glue. He was
Yeah.
the one that kept everybody together. And so he turned out to be a really fantastic pick, and a
Unsung
late
heroes,
round pick.
like
Then in
unsung hero
77,
types, right?
what?
Unsung hero, kind of.
Yes, very much so. And then in the 70s, after that, we come to Joe Klecko, which, again, from Temple. He had apparently, he had been a wrestler. He was playing undercover for another, like a minor league team. It was very different back in those days. There weren't a lot of rules. And he came to us. And as I said, he became a great player right from the start
Hmm.
and had leadership abilities. And so now you have those two starting for as the team was building, because when I was there, the team was basically losing. We never were above 500 for 10 years.
Hmm.
A lot of Jet fans can identify with that right now.
Yeah.
So they were the starting of the building blocks. And then 1979, we got the other two. And back in those days, you didn't really rotate. You had an extra guy. You had Ben Rudolph, or you had a few other people that came in, Lawrence Pillars, that was maybe a fifth guy or sixth guy. But really, the starting four, that's when Marty Lyons was drafted number one from Alabama, and he was a very well-known big time football. And then from a small school, Mark in the second round. So that made the sack exchange that became so well known. We used to have reunions at
Yeah.
Hofstra a lot of times, and Abdul and his wife Deborah and Omar, and we all were there. Everybody would get together on the buses and ride and go to the games.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. Stay at the Marriott there, and always have those reunions. Yes.
And when we were talking, when we were watching the game, we see Olu Fashanu wearing 74, how much their body, he and Abdul's body shape are
Yeah,
a
it
lot
really,
alike.
every time I see
Yeah.
Olu out there, it makes me think, even though it's a completely different position,
Yeah,
but just there's something with the way the
there is.
74 on him reminds me of our soldier of peace, Abdul.
And okay, and so all of those players are there, and obviously they become this big unit. Did you guys think that they would be initially, or did you think that they were going to be this big deal, or Were they, were you just trying to get good players in and
It
hope
was it
one of
was
them
it,
hit?
it
Or
was it was building with those couple of, as I said, in '76 a little bit with the draft and with Buttle and that coming through, and Schaefer Suggs and Richard Todd. And then '77 was another huge draft with Wesley Walker and Marvin
hmm
Powell and Kevin Long and Scotty Durkee and Matt Robinson, along with these two guys. Those were as I said, real building blocks by Mike Holovac. And then we just, from there, each year we got a few more players. Bobby Jackson coming in '70, Derek Gaffney, just a few. And so little by little, it just all kind of came together. Didn't
hmm
know that these four were going to have a name and going to be
right.
as great as they were. But it just, as I said, it slowly, we had a defensive line coach named Dan Sakanovich at that time, working with Walt Michaels, and they just worked well together. And Coach Michaels understood each guy. That's one thing he understood how each person worked, how to treat
hmm
each one, because each one was different. It doesn't mean one was better than the other or worse than the other, but they were all different.
hmm
And Coach Michaels was able to accept each one and bring out the best in each one.
hmm So, okay, so they're doing the 30 for 30, and we've obviously known about this for a little bit, right?
Yes.
We've lovingly gotten a heads up, and also gotten to be helpful, like to get to hear the stories, and hopefully people could bounce things off of you, and and I know you're someone who people trust with that kind of information. But naturally, it's a subject, and it is a group that it can definitely bring up emotions, and there are a lot of emotions, and it's one of those things where football players, they have a different, you know they go into war every play, and then you see at the end of a game when the whistle's blowing, or they're in victory formation, and the guys start hugging each other already, and literally 2 plays earlier, I was watching old Jets game footage last night of Greg Lloyd hitting Pat Ryan.
Oh,
It was like this nasty shot, like one of the worst I had seen. And then I think it was the same game when they had knocked Altoon out. And it was just like, it's such a, so there's so much emotion in this kind of stuff. Were all these guys, other than Abdul, who we knew like was holding it together, were these emotional guys?
I can't say for sure. As I said, I left, in '81. And as I said, so then it was really, really gelling again. They all were. I mean, I heard stories, of Marty Lyons just throwing chairs and getting the guys. You have to have somebody that riles people up in the locker
Mm-hmm.
room, and he was that guy, from what I understood. Joe Klecko was more for just, on the field, he would show excitement and stuff, but his toughness and everything. So, and then Mark with his sack dance.
So what is the sack? So walk us through the sack dance, because when I've tried to explain this to my daughter, I said he got in trouble for doing a dance, and she said, but don't they all do dances? And I was
Yes.
like, no, they didn't used to be allowed to do dances. So, when I've spoken to Mark before in the past, I've come to the conclusion that he just bursts out, and it's not controlled. It's not even planned the way I see a lot of them are planned today. It's just this burst of energy. And I know that back in that time, that was not looked upon
No.
kindly.
No, it really wasn't. And as I said, he never stood over after he made the sack. He never stood over a quarterback to taunt. Whenever he did his dance, it was, as you see, he always runs away and jumps
Mhm.
around and does it, and that type of thing. And so it was very unique. I mean, you had Billy White shoes, and you had a few people doing things, but it really was very, very rare back then. And as I said, I wasn't in the locker room. I wasn't around all that. I was in the front, and to me, they were all really good. And so I can't say that I saw all the different things that were going on.
The things we're going to see probably in the
Right,
piece, which is
right.
like
I
a
found that
look
out
behind
later
that.
as time went on. It's as a lot of players say today, you don't have to be best friends, but you have to work to a common goal. And each one, in their own way, made the other one better. And
Mhm.
Joe made Mark better. Mark made Joe better. The two defensive tackles they made each other better. And just so
Mhm.
as a group, you put that together. As I said, it doesn't matter if you care about each other, love each other, but you're trying to win the football game. And that
Mhm.
they all did. No question
Yeah.
about that. Every
There's a,
moment.
there's a lot of like these pairings though. Like there was an article recently I know about Simon and Garfunkel, of why they were at war with each other, and it was one of them had said one thing in an interview, and at one time and it got so deep under the skin and it
Yes.
hurt, and they never addressed it really. And so, because sometimes it's good to address it in a way that, obviously Mark addressed his feelings of betrayal by Brett Favre, correct? And it sounded like from Brett's point of view, the way he responded was this was like a thing that happens almost. I didn't get the sense that, if we watch it, that this is um some kind of like shocking thing, but that there seems to be like a lot more people are a lot more real sometimes with each other, even emotionally in football. And we don't get to see that often. We kind of picture that they don't, but the way he made it sound was like that this was almost like something that happens from time to
Yeah.
time with players.
Yeah. As I said, I was watching now. Of course, I've been watching everything all this week, and it's been wild. It really has, the amount of attention that it's gotten and all that type of thing. But I said, the thing I remember watching it, I had already, left the Jets at that time. But I remember watching that game when that did happen, and there's no question. Just like J.J. Watt today said on Pat McAfee show, there's no question. He took a dive when there were no receivers on that side when he's rolling out. And in fact, JJ said used to be, it wasn't considered a sack if there were no receivers on that side. He didn't know if back in those days it was, and I would really have to check that out to be sure.
So why explain to people why it matters? Why does it matter if someone took a dive? Like he was almost there already. Why don't you just give it to him? I think it's hard for some people to understand why that is such a
Well, let's
emotional
put it this way.
thing.
The number one is the integrity of the game. That's number one, because especially now, probably even more than ever with betting and fantasy and all that kind of
True.
stuff. Remember back then they didn't have that,
Yeah.
and they didn't have social media at all. So basically it was very, very different back then. But the integrity of the game, if guys are trying to set records and are doing it for the other team, then it's bad. If you're trying to help your own teammate, that's different. But when you are, as I said, if you were trying to set a record, catching 40-yard passes, and the defensive back just kept backing up on the other team, that would have to be an asterisk. That would not be a real record. Now, as I said, if you're trying to give your guy a couple extra yards to get a bonus, because back then they didn't make much money. So again, we have to kind of, it's a little bit of apples and oranges in comparison, because back then most players didn't even make $1 million, not even close.
How much of this bothers you, or at least sticks in your craw because it's a Giant?
Always, that's something, as I said, most people in today's world don't feel the same way I did. And that's okay.
I grew up, the Patriots were the enemy.
Right.
Those were the ones that looked down the nose at us. Those were the ones that, Belichick.
And it was the Dolphins, it was the Raiders, but the Giants were when we started in the 60s, because they were the establishment of the NFL.
Right.
And the fact when we took Matt Snell and he chose us instead of the Giants, that was the beginning of things really happening for the AFL. And then, of course, with Namath and everything. But that's the Giants, as I said, they were, the Wellington Mara, who was a wonderful man, by the way. He was really awesome. But they just looked down upon the AFL as a little brother. And so we wanted to prove something. And that's why Jim Turner, the field goal kicker, after we won the Super Bowl, and they went into the locker room, and he just said, "Welcome to the AFL." And that was what was the kind of football that they play, is what they actually play now. Much more wide open game than what the NFL did back then.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah. Cause I don't think a lot of people can picture a time when the Jets and so many other teams like the Raiders and others were not a part of the league officially, and they were, kind of like an outside squad. And the concept of that is hard to imagine for anyone today. And so, you've obviously, I'm assuming, well, I know you've spent a lot of time with Mark over the years, and with him, with his wife Joanne, and you've known him for a long time. But when you see him with Brett like that, what do you see, knowing him?
Well, as I said, when I just watched it for the first time, like everybody else yesterday, when it came out, I just could feel the trembling in his voice. I didn't know what to expect, and I could just feel him hurting. Like he said, when you hurt me, and as I said, his voice was shaking. And it was, as far as I know, he hadn't seen, Brett since then. And so it probably just came out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think he planned it. I wasn't there, but just knowing Mark's as you can tell, a very spontaneous person.
Yes, yes.
So
That's a good example, though. Like
yes, it
he
is. That's
does
just,
what he feels in the moment, and it's
yes.
so many people everything is pre-planned and pre-coordinated, and that's what we kind of see like with dances now and stuff like that, right? Like it is just, and I mean, like, again, you both have a lot in common like that. You both,
And Mark knows. Mark will admit he did some things that weren't, when he was young and just coming in from
mm-hmm.
East Central Oklahoma, and you're thrown into New York, into New York City. It's not even New Jersey like it is now. It was New York City. It was big. It was big time. All of a sudden, you're coming from this small little tiny place. At least, as I said, Marty was from Alabama with big time football, and
mm-hmm.
Klecko was from the Northeast, and Abdul was just a person that was very contained within himself, and confidence
grounded,
who he was.
Yeah, and which honestly keeps you out of trouble most of the time.
Yes,
because I mean, like, you think about these are kids then.
They are.
We picture them as like what we see them as now, but they're just like young kids trying to find their way through the world. And then in terms of so what would be the biggest thing you hope people take away from the 30 for 30? Have you seen it yet or no?
No, I have not.
Okay.
So I'm going to be nervous, anxious.
You won't eat. I know that.
Excited, everything for it. I think it's wonderful it's happening because there were so many Jet fans out there that grew up with that in the 80s with that whole group that they all remember. And that group is the one that is always together whenever we have, even to this day, have Legends weekends. There's still a lot of those guys. So I think a lot of people will identify and remember a lot of that stuff. And then the younger generation that thought that football began in the year 2000 or 2010 has never seen anything like this. I think they'll be amazed, and I'm sure it'll be quite a documentary. As I said, I'm going to be nervous and excited. I just hope, I have no idea, but I hope at the end they show that the guys do signings together, that Mark and Klecko have prayed together, just the Mark being saved and going to his church and singing in the choir, and how he's changed his life and met Joanne and has just a wonderful wife. And as I said, each one, and Marty has been with the Jets forever, since then, and whether it's announcing or as an ambassador. So they all have different things. And I hope that it comes to a conclusion to some degree. That's my little, Mary Poppins, Mary Sunshine kind of thing that I want them to see, because these guys have been doing. It's a shame, as I said, I'm so heartbroken over Abdul and passing, and we all are, and miss him and everything. But they did a lot of signings together, which is, I think, a fantastic sign.
So your verdict is that Brett took a dive?
Yeah, I mean, I did. I was no question in my mind, but even when I saw it, but I have to say, I really respect what he did last night. Afterward, that really got to my heart as well, because he explained that he had never really thought about that and the money that Mark may have lost through the years, because you figure that was 17 years, after this all happened, that Strahan got the record on that dive, and then it was. They said, well, the record has since been set by T.J. Watt, who we all have respect for, and this is 20 years after that. So he would have had another, an extra 20 years of all kinds of things happening, and even for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
and
I mean, Strahan got in. I mean, obviously had a great career, Super Bowl. I mean, there were a host of other things at the same time. So you kind of hold on to these things that we do have.
I don't know if because it really, he did it, but it wasn't. I really don't think he planned it beforehand.
Right.
But once he saw Brett go down, it was.
Well, I was going to say, I can also see that point of view and say, okay, well, you're trying to get the sack, obviously. And then you see, it reminded me of when Brett would get excited in a game and throw a pick. It was like, he had no option besides to sack him there. But it just,
Brett is a demonstrative person like Mark. Yeah, Brett, when he threw he'd jump into a guy's arms, and he completely. He was of that same ilk. as Martin in showing everything. And he was, a gunslinger, and just the way he played football.
I don't think we can say that as we can't say it anymore.
Is that word? Or what do you want to say?
I think he was a quick thrower. No finger guns, as I've told you. We have to protect the children.
It's just a term. Let's go.
No, words are not terms anymore. You know that.
Oh, gosh. Oh, dear.
So, yes. And, well, hopefully, let's see. Hopefully you'll be back doing some dances next year.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while to be able to do it. Really, I don't think there have been too many dances that I've seen on TV that are new.
No,
the gritty is still going on.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Little variations of it.
Yep.
But maybe next year, as I said, hopefully, if we get some victories. I know it's been a very tough year for everybody with the Jets. It wasn't what we all expected or hoped for.
While I have you here, obviously you're my mom, so I can get you anytime. But while I have you here, your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers' upcoming documentary series on Netflix? What are you expecting, or have you spent any time around him, or since he's been with the team, or what are your thoughts on Aaron? Because he's such a
he's an enigma.
He's an enigma. Yeah,
it's a perfect name.
It is. Yeah.
I really do. I met him each summer for the past 2 summers, and as I said, I didn't know what to expect, but. And I'm a person, this is the way I am. If a person treats me kindly, I will always I'm just a loyal human being. And when I met him, he spent 20 minutes talking to me about this friend of mine that was with me, who's working on the movie of my life right now, said John Cody. And he said that, he introduced me to Aaron. And then Aaron said, you're a pioneer, and I love pioneers. And he started saying, who's going to play you in a movie? And I talked about his different interviews, and we had a great conversation for like 20 minutes. And that was the first year. And then when I saw him again this year, he remembered me. We talked. He was unbelievable. So as I said, I never miss him on Pat McAfee. I'm rooting for him. Last week was the Aaron Rodgers that,
his movement,
I know the fourth quarter was a little tough, but boy, he was on his toes, light on his feet. It was really nice to see. And I know there's no doubt in my mind that he's been hurting a lot.
And I think that's why when we look at the end of games and we've said, well, the Aaron Rodgers of old would close out games in the fourth quarter. I think by that point, the adrenaline, the stuff that you're hopefully the shots you've had, I don't know if he's taking any shots, but like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but by the fourth quarter, like the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, you're in cold weather. It has worn off a lot. Well, not last week because that was Miami, but like, you're dealing with, like, I think by that point, a lot of the stuff we saw, because we've noticed this a lot, that the first half has been good and the second half has been a struggle. Yeah. And I think it's kind of like when they start to have to stop for a little bit. This past week,
though, was by far the best that I've seen him. Mm-hmm. As I said, on his toes, the movement, everything. It was really nice to see, and for his sake as well as for ours. And we did some really amazing things. As I said, that fourth quarter is just a real tough time. It's been somehow you have to get over that hump, and we haven't been able to.
Now, a last question: are you going to be on an ayahuasca retreat anytime soon?
No, never.
No.
Never. I'm crazy enough as it is. And I get my highs from, football.
Yes,
and
you
just
do.
Watching everything, whether it's college, whether it's pros, listening to everybody on TV and all the comments, and then being on Jets Twitter.
There's so many wonderful people like that are just, and again, for every, and I'm amazed at, look, being a woman in football, obviously there's lots of people who are really super awesome and respectful of you. And then there's also some who are not, but you handle Twitter or X really well.
Yeah, I got to call it X. I know.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I know. I've been very blessed with the way people are. They have been just amazing to me. As I say, mm-hmm. And if somebody has a comment, but I haven't really had, people swearing at me or doing. That was a long time ago. Yeah, people have been unbelievable. Whether it's the beat writers, whether it's Jets Twitter, whether it's people from other teams, or from all across the United States, and that I've met so many just as I said, amazing people, and then going to the different the Hula Bowl or the Senior Bowl and trying to and going up to Jet Camp every single year for 60 years. I've met so many amazing people through the years and friendships that I've formed. So I tend to, my nature is for positivity.
Hmm.
And that's the way most people have really been towards me, even
Yeah.
if I'm a jerk sometimes.
You're not a jerk. Although, like I said, I was watching you the other day with someone with Ryan Leaf the other day talking about cursing on TV or something, but I'm amazed at how you're very comfortable having the back and forth and genuinely having a discussion and like that you
And
can
Ryan
disagree.
And Ryan's been wonderful. What he has
Yeah,
accomplished in his sober life and
absolutely.
what he has done, and it's so nice because we would have a back and forth, but nothing where we're trying to belittle
Yes.
a person.
No. I think we forget sometimes you can disagree on things and you can
Yes,
have an opinion, and that is one of the plus sides to this. Is that you get to do that on this platform, and
and I know I'm an older person, come from a different generation
you'll
where
never be
things were a
old.
lot different, so that it does make it. I know that that's where I'm coming from, and people may agree or disagree, and that's, as I said, that's totally fine.
Yeah. All right. So who's going to be the next head coach of the Jets?
Oh, I wish I knew.
You have,
I have no idea. And I don't
uh-huh.
know. As I said, we've had people keep saying, well, we got to have somebody that's been a head coach. Well, Richie Kotite, Adam Gase were head coaches before.
Hmm.
We've had guys that, Herm Edwards was not a head coach and he
Hmm.
did a good job for us. We've had people both ways. The main thing is, I know it sounds the corny expression, leader of men, because nowadays you have to be offense, defense, special teams, be able to handle the whole team, not just one part, 1/3 of it. Then you have the staff. You have 25 assistant coaches. You have people all around. Then you have the media. And there's no question, New York has so much more in the media and looking in for one word that you might say wrong. And then it's going to explode. And then all the podcasts and everything like that. So there's so much stuff that goes into being a head coach that it's not just, this person can call plays or this
Right.
person is
Right.
really good at defense. You really do have to have that whole picture. And that's what like a Mike Tomlin does. I mean, how could you not have respect for somebody like him?
Yeah. I know. I mean, I know you've been a fan forever. I think John Harbaugh has.
Yes, John Harbaugh, Andy Reid has. I mean, there are, and there's more. There's a few more that are up and coming that seem to be doing. McDaniel's, McDonald over with Seattle.
Yep.
And he was a defensive guy, and he's got them playing both sides really well. So it's hard to. I don't know if there's any magic.
You're hoping Rex comes back, so you'll go back to
Portland. To Cortland. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the Cortland time. It really.
Yeah.
Wherever the Jets are, I will be.
You will. All right. Well, 30 for 30 is on Friday.
Friday night, ESPN. Time? I think it's at 8:00. And then after that, they say, I guess it'll be continually running on ESPN Plus.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully everybody will be watching it. And this is going to be very, as I said, very exciting.
Yep. Try to make sure you eat early in the day, Mom.
Yeah, and I know you won't be. How they're going to condense, because there's so much to this group. I don't know how they can condense this all, but it'll be very interesting to see.
I have a feeling there's going to be some bonus footage that comes out of this, and obviously they shot a lot, and leave the audience wanting more.
Yeah,
and it's far better that than someone who's like wishing, like, when is this going to end? I
think people are pretty excited for this.
I think so too.
From what I can tell, as I said, history is important with a team. And sometimes people have no idea what happened in the past and with their team. And I really think it is important to kind of get an idea. If I was a coach, one thing I would do, I know it sounds really dumb probably, but I would, even if it was a day or two, I would show each decade and what happened and who the players, and just so they have this kind of picture of either who they followed, what fans looked at, but just I think history is really important. I know it may not be to the players that are playing right now today, but that's just what I would do.
Well, it was kind of like when Aaron came here and at his first press conference, when they asked him if he was good, first off, if he was going to wear number 12.
Yeah.
And then he mentioned the single Super Bowl win. And it was the knowledge of that he was giving credibility and giving respect to Joe.
Yeah.
And there is no Namath curse. I'm going to throw that out there.
I get very upset with that.
I know you do, yeah.
I really do, because Joe, that's one thing I do get upset, because first of all, there's no such thing by Joe. And secondly, he is so special. The
Yeah.
hardest thing is
Truly.
people that didn't see him play. And back in those days, it was wide open football. You could get hit in the mouth as a quarterback.
Hmm.
You didn't run. You stayed in the pocket. He had 2 bum knees, first to throw for 4,000, and that was in a 14-game schedule. He was Rookie of the Year. He got the Super Bowl that made us legit. There's just so many things with Joe. And he was, how we talk about with Gastineau being bigger than life as
Yeah.
far as his people, everybody, whether you're male or female in different ages, everybody knows who he is. And the only, probably the number one player more than anybody else, as I said, through the years is Joe Namath.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's when I hear about that too, I'm like, I don't think that the guy didn't have to trade our future for a Super Bowl then.
No.
He had a defense. That's what he relied on also.
Yeah, we were number one defense under, again, Walt Michaels, who eventually became our coach. He was the defensive. Back then, you only had 4 assistant coaches. Now you have about 23 to 25.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's, again, everything's different. And the game is different.
For sure.
What you're allowed to do is different. What you're
getting penalized for finger guns.
Yes, I know.
This is my big crusade, okay? The finger gun movement is save the children.
Well,
made me think of someone, save the children. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting on Friday. I had everybody watch the clip of Mark with Brett before I could watch it because I was very nervous, and had my wife watch it. So I had Jenna, how is it? And she's like, she wouldn't tell me if it was okay or not. And she's like, just watch it real fast. So I did, and it was okay. And it was way better than I thought. I was expecting the way it was set up was like, an ambush, and it was more like what I heard again. What, like, to your point, was someone who
sometimes you have stuff pent up for you for a while, and sometimes you don't let it out. And all of us, I'm sure, are guilty at times of we saw that opportunity, and here it comes.
Yeah.
Poor Brett. He didn't know what hit him. He was just trying to shake hands, and then that was it. But I was so proud of the way he handled that part of it.
Should Mark be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes, I believe he should. As I said, you have, I guess, from what I see, you have to have somebody stand up for you, and you have that's in the voting thing and really preach it for you to get you in. I know now it's hard, but they do put 3 seniors in now instead of 1. But I sure do believe that he is. He changed the game. People say, well, he didn't always play the run. Mm-hmm. And I used to say that to Coach Walt Michaels, and he would say, Connie, that's not what I'm telling him to do. I said, just get the quarterback. That's the name of the game. Get the quarterback. Mm-hmm. And that's what he would do. And one thing I will say about, all 4 of those guys, they never took a play off. They never let up. First of all, I never saw them tap out. But secondly, they just, you never saw where they weren't giving every ounce in their body. And I think that's what was so great about all 4 of them.
Yeah, all of them were fighters. All of them were, incredible. It was an incredible line. And it was just that's what happens. You're filled with personalities that come from that's what football is. You come from every walk of life.
Yes.
Different people. And sometimes you get along and sometimes you don't. And sometimes you learn to over time. And, like there's people I'm friends with now who once upon a time I couldn't stand. And it's, you change and you grow. And that's one of the beautiful things about football is it's one of the few places still where people end up on a team and they're different from one another constantly,
right. But they have one goal in mind, and that's to win the game. Mm-hmm. And that's where you come together the most. That's one thing too I love about the Jets right now is as much as we're losing, the guys are sticking together.
Yeah.
And they're given every ounce. When I was watching the game last week against the Dolphins, I never felt that they quit. I never felt that they weren't giving everything. I was like,
we were of course upset about the fourth quarter, what happened, but it wasn't because they weren't trying and that they weren't giving their all. In fact, they came out of the bye week, much better than they have in the past.
Yes.
Previously, and I just think that there was, they've played hard. They haven't given up on each other. And it's so the 30 for 30 is on Friday at 8 p.m. ESPN. Here goes nothing.
Yes.
All right, Mom. Glad we could exercise these demons out to having to talk about Strahan and all these other funny things. So,
and I do appreciate all the people that I've watched either on TV or on social media and stuff like that. It's been very good. The measured tones and trying to take in and having really good discussions about it on their thoughts, because it was a long time ago. And so I am, as I said, Dan Patrick did a great job. And I said, McAfee with JJ Watt, and it was excellent. A really half-hour discussion on it. So there's been a lot, but I really thought it wasn't making fun of people. It wasn't really taking one side. It was just trying to figure things out.
Yeah. All right, Mama. Well, thank you for hanging out, and hopefully everyone gets to see this and hear your thoughts.
JETS, 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 Jets.
All right. Thank you. Love you, Mom.
Love you.